People say I'm the life of the party 'cause I tell a joke or two. Although I might be laughing loud and hearty, deep inside I'm blue. So take a good look at my face. You'll see my smile looks out of place. If you look closer, it's easy to trace the tracks of my tears. Hello, Home Slices, and welcome back to Sup Media Reviews. Season 2 is here, and we're kicking things up a notch. We're diving into music, TV, and movies from over 20 years ago, plus we're kicking off a brand new YouTube series that's going to bring even more fun your way. This season is full of fresh reviews, special guests, and plenty of laughs. Ready to jump in? Let's get into this week's episode. What is up, Home Slices, and welcome back to another episode of Sup Media Reviews. I'm your host, Kiara, and today we're kicking off the first podcast episode of the new year by celebrating the 20th anniversary of Last Holiday, the 2006 feel-good film starring Queen Latifah, LL Cool J, Giancarlo Esposito, and many, many more. This is a movie that I'm genuinely excited to talk about. Last Holiday is one of my ultimate favorite comfort films, so much so that I rewatch it about 4 times a year, and I even own a digital copy on Amazon Prime. It's one of those movies that I can throw on in the background and instantly feel better. It's warm, it's funny, it's aspirational, and it always leaves me in a good place. So I'm really happy that we get to spend some time with it today. So before we dive into the story and my full review, let's start with a few fun facts about this movie. Last Holiday is actually a remake of a 1950 film of the same name, which originally starred Alec Guinness. The writers were huge fans of classic Ealing Studios comedies and initially envisioned this version of the film with John Candy as the lead. Unfortunately, the project was shelved after John Candy passed away. Rest in peace, Uncle Buck. But years later, the script resurfaced, and when Queen Latifah's agent read it, they reached out to the writers about reworking the story with a woman at the center. And honestly, I can't imagine this movie existing in the way it does without her, because why do men need permission to live life to the fullest? Anyways, I'm joking. Quick bonus facts. All of the lavish food that you see in the movie was prepared by Food Network chefs who traveled with the production, and Queen Latifah even learned some basic cooking techniques so she'd look comfortable in the kitchen scenes. And yes, the recipes were actually published by Food Network, so there's a chance that you could look on the internet and find a recipe for poulet chapatulas or some of the other fancy dishes that were being cooked in this movie. Somehow that's like a nice little added bonus. Now, if you'd like to check out Last Holiday, you can catch it on Hulu and Roku TV as of the recording of this review. Now, let's move on to my personal connection and the kind of cultural significance of this film. First things first, I freaking love Queen Latifah, y'all. She is one of my favorite celebrities, period. I've always admired her presence, her confidence, the way that she shows up in the world, and you can tell that the people who work with her really have had like a major respect for her. From Living Single to Set It Off to Last Holiday and beyond, she's been a part of so many projects that have shaped pop culture and Black pop culture in particular, and she does it while being unapologetically herself. As a larger Black woman, seeing Queen Latifah lead a story like this, one where she gets to center joy and travel and luxury and self-fulfillment, really is important to me. There aren't many stories that encourage Black women to live their lives fully for themselves rather than only for others. The only one that's kind of coming to mind for me right now is Stella Got Her Groove Back, but that has like a weirdness around it that I don't really care for with, the age dynamic and whatnot. And it centers around a relationship, whereas this one, the relationship is more of a kind of a footnote a little bit. But because of how Black women are often socialized to be more altruistic and self-sacrificing and endlessly responsible, seeing a narrative that says your life is worth enjoying hits a little bit different. And that's one of the reasons why Last Holiday has stayed with me for 20 years and why it's been so interesting to see the movie experience a bit of resurgence online in recent years. Even though it wasn't a massive box office success success when it came out. I think it fell like $1.5 million short of breaking even. People still talk about it today. People bring it up in social media. I've seen that a lot. I've seen a few movie YouTubers watch the film on their channel and enjoy it today as well. And, people revisit it every holiday season. To me, this tells me that the message and the story is really timeless and that other people feel similarly to me. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get into the story of Last Holiday and talk about whether or not it holds up 2 decades later. Last Holiday opens in a Black church in New Orleans during choir rehearsal. We get introduced to Georgia Bird, who is present, but is not really present. She's kind of singing softly. She's not fully engaged in singing to the Lord. And the Reverend calls her out in front of the entire choir, kind of publicly shaming her for not singing with her full heart, which is pretty true to life. We also learn that Senator Dillings is expected to attend church that Sunday to help kick off a community development initiative, and we get to meet that guy later. From there, we follow Georgia through her everyday life. She takes public transportation home. She shops with coupons. She buys lean cuisines, and she lives in a modest duplex in a rougher neighborhood. And despite having a car in her driveway, she doesn't drive it. She shares this quiet, caring relationship with a young neighbor named Darius, a young boy who lives, next door with his grandfather. And Georgia is cooking these elaborate meals. And this one in particular is poulet chapatulas, which is some type of chicken dish where she's inspired by watching Chef Emerald make this particular recipe on TV, but she actually never eats the meals herself. She invites Darius over and she sends, a plate over to his grandfather, and she decides to eat lean cuisine instead of, eating the delicious meal that she cooked while Darius enjoys the food. We see that Georgia is documenting her dreams in a scrapbook that she calls her possibilities book. Inside, she has photos of places she wants to visit, people she wants to meet, meals that she has cooked but hasn't eaten. And she actually has a page featuring her coworker Sean with this cut and paste fantasy over a bride and a groom, which is very adolescent, but I get it. It's part of the possibilities book. Darius ends up discovering this page and kind of encourages her to make a move. He already sees that Georgia deserves more and deserves a better life than what she is living right now. Georgia is just very timid and reserved and really hesitant to step outside of her comfort zone. Now, at work, Georgia is a top employee at Cragen's department store where she sells cookware and she hosts these weekly cooking demonstrations. Her manager, Mr. Adamian, is annoying and constantly reprimands her, and he prioritizes profits over people. And of course, he also idolizes the store's owner, Mr. Matthew Cragen. Now, Georgia and Sean, who, like I said, are coworkers, they share these awkward but mutual romantic tensions, and they are also encouraged by their interesting coworkers to go forward, but they're kind of too awkward to make the next move. And Georgia, of course, never quite finds the courage to act on any of her desires. Now, during one of her demonstrations, and, while she's talking to Sean, Georgia accidentally hits her head on a broken cabinet door. It was a hard hit. Okay. Sean carries her. Sean carries her to the store's on-site doctor, which is I haven't been in a department store in a long time, but I don't recall ever seeing one that had a clinic that was so built out that it had a CAT scan machine. Am I tripping? But anyways, Georgia gets a CAT scan, and the scan reveals something alarming. After a second scan and a second opinion, Georgia is diagnosed with a rare terminal brain condition known as Lampington's disease. She's given about 3 weeks to live, and the only potential treatment would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket without anesthesia, and is not covered by her insurance. Devastated, Georgia spirals. She goes home, she drinks, she flips through her possibilities book, and she is overwhelmed by regret over the life she didn't live, over the food she didn't eat, the chances, that she didn't take, and the love that she never pursued. And she has a fruitless conversation with her sister on the phone, who quickly makes everything about her and isn't even aware enough that Georgia is upset and would want to tell her something. And so Georgia hasn't been able to share this news with anybody, and she's just so full of regret, and nobody is really being there for her, even though she kind of makes it part of her business to be there for other people. The other thing that I want to point out that's kind of a fun fact is that while she is on the phone with her sister has 3 children who are acting a fool in the background. And 2 of those children are Chloe and Halle Bailey. I was surprised to see their names on the cast list, but I think that's kind of cool that they went on to be big stars, like they are today. Now, the next day, Georgia arrives late to work and tries to confide in Mr. Adamian about what's going on with her. But he is a jerk. He dismisses her entirely. He answers his phone in her face. And in a moment of just like frustration, she smashes his cell phone with her shoe. She ends up quitting her job on the spot, even as he begs her to stay, basically saying, your department is one of the only ones that's profitable and fourth quarter sales are down. And she's like, why didn't you tell me this before? And of course, he thinks that she is gouging him for more money. But as she is leaving the building, Sean asks her out to a future Hornets game. He's like, it's in a couple of weeks, but I want to get on your calendar. And heartbroken, she turns him down. And this scene is actually more sad than I remember it being. They did some good acting here, and you can see the sadness in their eyes of like the timing is just never right for them. So that Sunday, Georgia, who of course is in the choir, has a public emotional breakdown during the church service, and her anguish kind of turns into a full-blown praise break, which culminates in her, outing her sister caught astray. But basically she's asking God, why me? Like, I did things the way I was supposed to do. I wasn't out here sleeping with married men like my sister. Like, why would you choose this to happen to me? And the rest of the church is kind of inspired by her emotional outburst. But literally, as she's leaving the church, it kind of symbolizes that she is going to leave her old life behind, because what she does next is crazy. Georgia goes home and makes some decisions. She throws away her possibilities book. She liquidates her IRA and the savings bonds her mom gave her. And she books a $1,600 ticket to Karlovy Vary in the Czech Republic. And she's going to be staying at the Grand Hotel Poop, which is something that was in her possibilities book, but now she's making it a reality. Without telling anyone about her diagnosis, she decides to spend her final weeks living it up, okay? So all of this is how the story gets set in motion. Now, one thing I really find interesting about how this movie opens up is that it starts in the Black church. And this is very interesting as a person who also grew up in the Black church. Black women are especially made aware in church that our purpose is service. Service to God, service to family, service to the men in our lives, service to the community, which is often at the expense of ourselves. The church in this film kind of subtly reinforces that idea. While Georgia doesn't necessarily lose her faith in this film, you can see how things kind of turn around for her. During choir practice, Georgia is shamed, not necessarily for doing something wrong, but for not giving enough, not singing loudly enough, not, feeling, the passion enough. And that messaging kind of follows her everywhere. The Black church is full of women working behind the scenes. They're watching children, they're cooking meals, they're cleaning up, they're holding things together, while men often get to stand at the forefront. And over time, that kind of environment can teach women that self-focus is selfish, especially if you're a caretaker. And that context matters because Georgia's entire life kind of reflects that lesson. She cooks incredible meals, but doesn't eat them and gives them away to her neighbors. She saves money, but she doesn't enjoy it. She dreams, but doesn't act. She has a car, but she doesn't drive. Even little Darius can see it. He understands instinctively that Georgia deserves more than this small, restrained life, which makes it even sadder that she can't see it herself yet. There's also a subtle critique of diet culture here when it comes to her meals. Georgia is denying herself pleasure under the guise of responsibility and discipline, even when she is like doing all the labor. These meals that she is making, because she's making them herself, have nutritional value and they have vegetables. And it's like, girl, if you don't eat this food, that processed lean cuisine cannot be better than poulet chapatoulas, okay? Now, I do have to say, Queen Latifah's accent in this movie is inconsistent at best. She's clearly not from New Orleans. She's a New Jersey lady. And the attempt to hold this New Orleans accent or Southern accent or whatever accent she wants to do kind of comes and goes throughout the movie. And it's one of the few things that really annoys me about the film. For those of you who don't know, I do have a connection to Louisiana. I lived there for about 8 years while I was getting my degree and a little bit after, as I went to LSU. So her accent is just annoying me. And it's like, If you couldn't hold it the whole time, then just sound like you're from New Jersey all the time. It's okay. But anyway, that accent thing is not bad enough to outweigh everything else that this movie does well. At work, Mr. Adamian is one of kind of many cartoonish villains in this story. He's a little exaggerated, a little too on the nose. He's over the top, always on his flip phone, but he kind of represents something very real. This corporate middle management that values profit over people, chasing the numbers. And he doesn't see Georgia as a person, only as this top performing employee. But he doesn't even honor the fact that she's the top performing employee because he thinks it'll lead her to ask for more money, assuming that she cares about the money the same way he does. And that is basically kind of what makes her eventually snap and smash his phone and rage quit, which is incredibly satisfying, especially for her. Now, the scene where Sean finally asks her out hit me harder on this rewatch than it ever has before. I don't know if I really paid attention to it before, but I was genuinely sad to see that they almost had their moment and it kind of slipped away from them. Like knowing that, hey, this game, our first date is going to be in a few weeks and she wouldn't even be around for it. It's really sad. And while neither of these actors or rappers turned actors are actually the best at acting, they did a fantastic job in this scene. You can see the sadness in their eyes, and especially in LL Cool J's eyes. So they did a fantastic job. So turning Sean down is logical, but it's also kind of emotionally devastating. And then there's the moment where she has her church breakdown. Now, if you grew up in a Black church with a choir, you might have actually seen something like this happen, which I think is fun that this is a little true to life. Like sometimes there'll be a person who's having a moment. They're grieving or mourning or something is going on with them and they kind of yell out, and if the timing is right, they kind of commandeer the service and a praise break, happens. It's a moment of collective emotion. Georgia questioning God and asking why is really painful. And she's like, I did the things that people said that I was supposed to do, or that you said that I was supposed to do. I followed your commandments and I haven't gotten anywhere. I'm not satisfied with my life and now it's about to be over. And so I love the part where she bangs on the cymbals. And even though Queen Latifah does not have the standard kind of gospel voice that you might expect to hear, you can feel a lot of the emotion and anguish that she's in. It's very interesting that the church maybe doesn't follow up with her after that to see what she's really going through, or at least we don't see it. But yeah, even the way the congregation kind of absorbs all of that and reframes it as praise feels really authentic. And in some ways, maybe it's a little bit dismissive. It's like a praise break is like a feeling of joy. And to me, everyone else in the room is like hyped up and joyful. Whereas what Georgia is feeling is anguish, really. But yeah, the moment is messy and uncomfortable and human. And I kind of like this scene. It feels true to life, and see everyone else experiencing this joy while she's in pain really kind of shows what's going on for her emotionally. So when Georgia finally throws away her possibilities book, that really is a symbolic moment. She has decided to stop dreaming. She's done wishing, and she's going to choose action, even if it means doing it alone and without telling the people in her life what's going on with her. And this is where, things really kick off for her. Now, when we rejoin Georgia, she's officially on her way to Europe, and the transformation kind of starts right away. On the plane, she causes a bit of a scene, commenting on how cramped the economy seats have become and refusing to spend the flight with a stranger practically in her lap. After a tense exchange with a nasty flight attendant, Georgia does something that I have never seen happen before. She's already on the plane, but she upgrades to first class. She like, how much for the cocoon? Suddenly, she's a first class cocoon. She's in luxury. She drinking champagne. She eating a proper meal. And we are vibing out to Nina Simone's Feeling Good, which plays and really demonstrates what's going on in this moment for her. She is feeling good because for the first time, she's doing the things that she wants to do. Money is not an object. She's going someplace that she always has wanted to go. She's feeling good, y'all. Now, once she lands, Georgia takes a helicopter to the Grand Hotel Poop because she is done waiting in lines. And I hate waiting in lines too. I love that. Okay. But she immediately draws attention from guests and staff alike. At the hotel, we meet some of my favorite characters in the film, which are basically the hotel staff. We meet the bellhop Felipe, Later on, we meet the spa workers. We have Gunther, the floor valet. We got some other people, receptionists, people working in the background. And eventually we do meet the head chef there at the hotel. But all of these people make everything feel really real and authentic for some reason. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. Also, I feel like they have a really good contrast to maybe some of the cartoonish villains. Among those villains are Matthew Cragen, who happens to be at the same hotel. He is the owner of the department store that Georgia worked at previously. We also have Senator Dillons, who skipped the church meeting because he's here in the freaking Czech Republic. We also have a congressman and his wife, and also Cragen's young assistant and affair partner, Miss Burns. Georgia gets to the front desk, and that helicopter ride put her 2 hours ahead of schedule, so she upgrades to a $4,000 a night presidential suite without hesitation. And all of this stuff kind of sets off a chain reaction of misunderstandings about her wealth and status. Through a mix of assumptions and kind of have-heard conversations, people begin to believe that she is this powerful, wealthy insider and possibly even politically connected, particularly to Senator Dillons, whose meeting he missed with the church folks. Things get worse when she mentions how bad Cragen's fourth quarter is going to be to Cragen's assistant, Miss Burns. Now, that night at dinner, Georgia stuns everyone by ordering everything on the menu with no substitutions. This is my type of girl, okay? Earning the admiration and attention of legendary chef Didier, someone that she really wanted to meet and was in her possibilities book. While the political elite at Cragen's table kind of nitpick and customize their meals, Georgia eats the meals as intended, and she eats them joyfully and unapologetically, becoming the center of attention without even trying. People at Cragen's table note that she has people eating out of her hand and that she's not watching her cholesterol, and them kind of being enamored by the fact that this lady really knows how to live it up, okay? Now, back in New Orleans, Sean grows suspicious of Georgia's sudden disappearance. After pressing Dr. Gupta, he learns the truth about her diagnosis and learns of her whereabouts from Darius. He immediately books a flight to find her, despite being terrified of flying. He must really like her. There's some times where I have a hard time getting my husband to come upstairs, let alone flying from New Orleans to the Czech Republic. Now, meanwhile, Georgia leans fully into indulgence. She has spa treatments. She's doing snowboarding lessons. Somehow she masters snowboarding instantly on a black diamond slope. Later, she goes base jumping, where she outshines Cragen, who humiliates himself in the process by peeing his pants, basically. And her fearless energy is captivating everyone around her, especially the hotel staff, who kind of see her as being inspirational. As misunderstandings grow, Cragen grows paranoid and ends up hiring Gunther to dig up dirt on Georgia. Gunther snoops around through Georgia's room and discovers her Cragen employee ID, and then a note detailing her cremation wishes, realizing too late that Georgia is not a fraud or a schemer, but someone who is facing the end of her life and doing it on her own terms. At a charity casino night, while Gunther is rummaging through Georgia's stuff, Georgia wins big by betting on 17 black 3 times in a row, walking away with about $100,000 US. How sad is it that her look has kicked in right as she's dying, okay? Later, Smokey Robinson performs Tracks of My Tears, and the song really hits hard, which is a perfect mirror for how Georgia is feeling inside. She is smiling on the outside and grieving on the inside, and if you look hard enough, you can see those sad parts of herself. Also, there's a scene where Georgia also has to turn down an advance from Senator Dillons, where he's like, hey, come visit me in Washington. And she's like, nah, I don't like dudes that are for sale, okay? And I'm like, yes, go ahead, girl. Also, you're going to die soon, so you couldn't even if you wanted to. But back at the hotel, encouraged by Gunther and weighed down by the truth of her mortality, Georgia decides that it's time to go home, back to the people who truly know her and truly care about her, instead of over here with these, senators and congressmen that ain't got no scruples now. Gunther does tell Chef Didier about Georgia's impending death, but she returns Cragen's money. Unfortunately, she doesn't keep her mouth fully closed like she should have. She basically tells Cragen that Georgia works for him, which gives him more than enough information to get what he really wants. You should have been quiet, Gunther. Now, this part of Last Holiday is kind of my favorite part of the movie because it's where we finally see Georgia decide to take up space. She's taking up space physically, emotionally. She's at, the forefront. She's at the center. From the moment she upgrades her plane seat, there's this clear shift. Georgia stops shrinking herself. She stops apologizing for existence. She's drinking Hennessy. She's having a good time. She is treating her time as precious because for the first time she realizes how precious it truly is. One thing that I love here is how magnetic Georgia becomes without trying. She isn't chasing validation. People are drawn to her because she is living honestly. The hotel staff feel especially important to that message. Unlike the wealthy guests, they respond to her humanity and not necessarily her perceived status. They see her joy, her generosity, her openness, how she's defending them, that type of stuff. And that connection feels genuine. That said, the movie kind of does lean hard into more cartoonish villains. And when I say cartoonish, I don't necessarily mean like, Tom from Tom and Jerry. I'm just saying like their character is more on the nose. Like these people are not just sneakily bad or have it to be like understood that this person might have ulterior motives. It's not understated. It's very on the nose. It's very upfront. They're saying the mean things out loud and it's like very obvious. That's kind of what I mean by cartoonish. Cragen is like absurdly awful. Miss Burns is delusional about him leaving his wife. Senator Dillings has like a weak storyline where they try to make it like he actually has like romantic feelings towards Georgia. And I'm like, this storyline is weak AF, okay? Because there's a moment where she is wearing this fancy red dress. There's a montage that we get earlier in the story of her going shopping. And it's a montage with Gwen Stefani's, Rich Girl in the background, which is a fantastic song. And I feel like the soundtrack is like pretty good at being like the background and helping us understand the feelings of each moment. I really like that about this movie. But anyways, she comes into dinner on the first night wearing this pashmina. And when the maitre d' takes the pashmina off and like reveals those titties, Senator Dillings is like, oh, hey, sister girl, or hello, sister is what he said. And throughout the movie, like one time when he gets into the hot springs with her, when, he's trying to figure out where he knows her from, there is maybe a little bit of a hint, but there's no real spark between them. So when he asked her out to come visit him in Washington sometime, it doesn't work for me. So I think that storyline was really weak and they could have removed it. I feel like the romantic tension never really lands between the two of them, but still I kind of understand the purpose. We are showing how, power, money, and influence can corrupt people who claim to serve the public and reinforcing that Georgia is willing to tell it how it is, even when there's this perceived power imbalance. Now, Georgia's interactions with Miss Burns are a little bit complicated for me. There is a scene where she has to reprimand Miss Burns for being mean to Brigitte, who's performing a spa service on her because she has BJ neck. You have to know the movie to know what I'm talking about. But anyways, after that, Miss Burns goes to her and kind of tells her life story about how the affair is affecting her and her job prospects and how she doesn't have an education. And Georgia is like, girl, go back to school. These men never leave their wives. She kind of bursts the bubble for her. And this changes the relationship between Georgia and Miss Burns. And so it feels a little complicated for me because on one hand, Georgia is compassionate and honest, but on the other, it kind of taps into this familiar trope of like the endlessly giving Black woman who is offering emotional labor, even while facing her own mortality. And it's like, I understand what they're saying about the character of Georgia, but I also kind of side eye it. Georgia does not owe that white lady nothing, okay? It's one thing to tell somebody, hey, you have a price tag on your forehead. And it's another thing to give somebody life advice about turning their lives around after sleeping with a married man. Girl, move on. Anyways, what really works for me though is Georgia finding her voice, even if it's not in that New Orleans accent, okay? She tells people the truth. She defends the workers or, the average working person. She refuses to play small. She demands respect. She gets what she wants, including, a $4,000 per night room. And the kind of irony and the tragedy behind this is that it takes a terminal diagnosis for her to do it. And so this part of the film kind of makes us ask hard questions, right? Like, why do we save joy for vacations? Why do we postpone living it up until someday, knowing that that someday may actually never come? Georgia realizes that someday isn't guaranteed, and the movie suggests something radical but simple. Living fully attracts abundance, confidence, honesty, pleasure. These things draw the right people and opportunities towards you, and you don't necessarily have to wait for someday to achieve them. If you live in the moment, live the life that you want to live now, the right opportunities will come to you and you can take it to the next level. Whereas if you're denying yourself the pleasures and joys of life and it suddenly is upended, you're full of regret. So do what you want to do now, okay? Georgia spent her whole life waiting, but now she's choosing to enjoy every moment, and that choice changes everything for her, even if she doesn't really know how her story is going to end. So now, in this final stretch of the movie, we see Sean finally landing in the Czech Republic and heading toward the Grand Hotel Poop, just as Georgia is on her way out trying to head home. But of course, fate intervenes as it does in all rom-coms. There's suddenly an avalanche that blocks the road on New Year's Eve, which forces Georgia to turn back to the hotel, while Sean somehow magically decides to walk the rest of the way through the snow and mountains. This is probably one of the more unrealistic things. First off, how did he navigate there? He ain't had no map. How do you know how to get to this hotel? Okay. I also don't think he would have survived the walk in that weather, but we'll move on from there. Okay. Now, meanwhile, Kragen has officially confirmed that Georgia worked for him in the cookware department. So now he is armed with this information and he has it cocked and loaded. Okay. Back at the hotel, the avalanche has left the kitchen short-staffed. So Georgia, because she's Georgia, offers to help, and Chef Didier happily brings her into the kitchen to get it done, because they have this New Year's Eve dinner to prep for and they need all hands on deck, y'all. So they end up having this stupid conversation that I really hate about turnips. I feel like this particular conversation could have been better, but the point of this conversation is that people hate turnips, but when you cook them real good, the fire makes it better. And you know, the turnip is a self-made vegetable. Stupid conversation. There's a million different ways they could have like phrased a fire or cooking or adversity making something better. But are you a turnip? Are you kidding? Anyways. But this part of the conversation is where Georgia actually realizes that Chef Didier knows about her diagnosis. And he's like, when I met you, I knew something was different about you. You have an appetite for life. And he enjoys being in her presence. And she's like, okay, don't tell anybody else. Let's just, continue cooking like, nothing ever happened. And so they work together to help create this extravagant New Year's Eve meal. And it's interesting because indirectly, she gets another item checked off her unspoken bucket list. She's not just eating this man's food, but she is working alongside Chef Didier and becoming his friend. Like, how cool is that? Now, at the New Year's Eve dinner, Chef Didier introduces Georgia as someone who helped, make the meal what it was. I love the way he says Louisiana. But she heads upstairs to get dressed for the dinner, and she has this quiet moment with herself. I hate her hair, y'all. Her wig for like the second half of this movie pissed me off. I'm sorry. She has this weird ponytail thing that reminds me of Beauty and the Beast for some reason, and I just low-key hate it. I hate it so much. But while she's getting dressed, she has a quiet moment with herself in the mirror, and she basically says, like, if she gets another trip around the sun, that she won't live in fear anymore, which I think is sad and sweet. At the same time, back in New Orleans, Dr. Gupta realizes that the CAT scan machine is faulty and that the lesions weren't real. Georgia does not have Lamberton's disease, and she's not gonna die anytime soon, Lord willing, lest the creek don't rise, okay? So he rushes to send a fax to the hotel explaining everything, of course with Darius's help. This little boy is revealing her location one person at a time. But anyway, back at the New Year's Eve dinner, Kragen publicly exposes Georgia as a department store sales clerk making $29,000 a year. Y'all, that is meager, okay? The table is stunned, but Georgia stands up and she confirms it. She explains that she came there to spend all her money because she's going to die. And she delivers this quiet but powerful speech. I think it could have been a little more powerful, but it was pretty powerful, about how we're taught to grind and wait and delay joy without realizing that someday is never guaranteed. And that this experience has made her really understand that some of the things that we worry a lot about really are not important. And so she basically wishes everyone a happy new year and walks away. And the group finally turns on Cragen. They call him out for his cruelty. They leave him sitting alone. Even Miss Burns, who he was the most upset with for leaving, she basically quits on the spot and tells him that she's going back to school and that she's going to help his wife take him to the cleaners, okay? Now, as the New Year countdown begins, the fax finally arrives, but it kind of falls to the floor unnoticed while the receptionist is admiring the ceiling that Georgia pointed out earlier in the movie. Now, Cragen is fully spiraling, okay? And he heads out to a ledge on maybe 5th or 6th floor of the hotel, not up high enough, apparently. Georgia follows him and tells him plainly that, hey, whatever you're dealing with is not worth ending your life. I would know, okay? She calls him out for treating people like things that he can buy and sell and for putting his pasty face on the company magazine all of the time. She's basically saying, you're self-absorbed, you use people, you need to be a better person and get off this ledge, okay? And then she starts talking about her own dreams about opening a bistro and falling in love, and she ends up mentioning, Sean back home. And then Sean calls her name, and she's one of the funnier moments where she's like, oh my gosh, it's starting. I'm hearing voices. Oh, I love that part. It's hilarious. But it actually is Sean. He's real and he's there and he's making his way up to the ledge to tell her that he knows about the Lambert's disease and he quit and came there just to be with her, even if they only have a week left together. And, that he wants to spend it with her. It's very sweet. Gunther, ends up finding the facts and runs it up there. And after Sean confesses his love, Gunther is like, girl, you ain't finna die. That dog scan was faulty. And so Georgia is like, oh, now that you know that I'm not going to die, you still want to be together? Or are you just doing this because you think I'm going to die? And of course he sticks around because he's a good guy. So Georgia kind of realizes that, God tricked her into living her best life. And she, kind of laughs at it, a little wacky laugh, a little manic. But they get off the ledge and they all, kind of have something to live for, right? So she gets a kiss from her new beau and they step off the ledge together and back into the hotel with a new lease on life. And even Cragen vows to be a better person, inspired by Georgia as well. The film closes with Georgia opening her restaurant in New Orleans called Georgia's Joint. Chef Didier is there on vacation. Her family and her coworkers are there. Even Chef Emerald shows up. And Dr. Gupta is also there, and Georgia tells him, hilarious, and one of my favorite lines, that he never should have had that job in the first place. That is hilarious to me. Now, we end the movie with some updates from Georgia's now renamed Book of Realities, showing how everyone's lives changed after meeting her. We got Miss Burns, who went to spa management school and doesn't have neck pains anymore. We learned that Gunther now has a private investigator agency, which is kind of cool, and she gets paid to go through people's drawers and whatnot. We have Chef Didier, who was a guest on Emerald's show, but nobody understood what he was talking about. And we also have Dr. Gupta, who is now at an ashram in the Himalayas, and Cragen is his first initiate. Cragen's wife and the SEC took all of his money, so now he's living a more spiritual existence up there with Dr. Gupta. And of course, Georgia and Sean got married in a skydiving ceremony, and they are determined to live their lives to the fullest. So that's the end of the movie, y'all. This ending pretty much works for me. Georgia basically got everything she wanted, and how often do Black lady characters get everything that they wanted, okay? She gets love, purpose, joy, fulfillment. But what makes this powerful isn't necessarily the happy ending. It's how she got there. She didn't become magnetic because of money. She became magnetic because she stopped being afraid. And what this movie shows so beautifully is that when Georgia starts living honestly and living life to the fullest, saying what she thinks, doing what she wants, choosing herself, people are automatically drawn to her. Opportunities present themselves. She has great experiences and life's doors open for her. And yes, it's heartbreaking that it took a terminal diagnosis to give her permission to live that way. But that's kind of also the point. So many of us are taught to wait. Wait till the money is right. Wait till the timing is perfect. Wait until we have earned the right to rest or to have joy or to indulge. And Georgia's story reminds us that time is the one thing we never get to save. Seeing a Black woman, especially a larger Black woman, live this freely, boldly, and unapologetically is still rare. The film isn't about, luxury or travel. It's about confidence, voice, presence, trusting yourself. I love being reminded of this every time I watch the film. So now it's time for our 2 standard questions that we ask at the end of every Submedia Reviews review. Does the movie hold up, and is it worth a rewatch? Now, when it comes to if it holds up, I'm going to say yes. The lesson in this movie is timeless. Life is fragile. Joy should be right now, and regret is very heavy. This is such a timely reminder for people of all backgrounds, and this movie really relays the message in a way that's funny and earnest at the same time. Are there things that don't age perfectly? For sure. Okay. I mean, like, at least one of the actors has been in hot water with some very serious allegations. Okay. Some cultural references might fly over younger viewers' heads because, I mean, like, where is Chef Emerald now? He doesn't carry the same cultural weight as he once did 20 years ago. Queen Latifah's New Orleans accent is questionable, and it really bothers me throughout this film. The film is also kind of fantastical in a few ways, with the like cartoonish on the nose villains, the crazy snowboarding scene, the fact that she found size accessible luxury clothing in the freaking Czech Republic. I mean, come on. And hitting the same number in roulette 3 times in a row. These are all things that are fantastical. Okay. But the point is, it's magical for her because she's about to die. Okay. Her luck is turning around. So even with all of that, non-realism, the heart of the film is still really strong. Who couldn't use a reminder to live it up while you can, okay? And yes, I actually think this movie is also worth a rewatch, whether you watch it during the holidays or in the middle of July. Last holiday is a reminder to stop living in the waiting room of your own life. You never know when your number is going to be called, okay? For me, as a larger Black woman, this story has always been deeply personal. It reminds me that living fully doesn't require permission, and that joy isn't something that we earn later. It's something that we have to choose now. This movie really inspired me to find ways to live it up, find ways to rest, find ways to travel and find joy in moments all throughout the year, and not just wait for those moments where the timing or the money is right. Now, for me, I do that in a bunch of different ways while also balancing my everyday responsibilities, of course. So if you want to check this out, if you want to laugh, if you want to be reminded of this important lesson, I suggest that you find this movie and give it a watch. All right, so that is the end of my review, y'all. Before we get out of here, let's talk about the ratings. On Rotten Tomatoes, Last Holiday currently sits at 56% from the critics and 67% from audiences. And honestly, that kind of partially tracks for me. It makes sense to me that audiences connected with this movie more than critics did, and I can kind of understand why this film doesn't land perfectly for everyone. There are moments that feel a little hammy and, with the villains playing it up and, not every storyline being fully fleshed out. But for me, those imperfections do not outweigh how this movie makes me feel. Personally, I'd give Last Holiday about a 92, okay? This movie looms really large in my heart. It came out when I was like 15 years old. And for me, it's a big part of why I live my life the way that I do. It's this reminder of living it up, right? I'm rewatching often. It genuinely inspires me and reminds me of why I started this podcast in the first place, because how a movie makes you feel really matters. Sometimes more than whether every plot point is airtight or if every performance is flawless or if the costuming and lighting are right. Last Holiday makes me feel hopeful. It reminds me that nothing is guaranteed and that time is precious, and that living your life to the fullest without waiting for someday is one of the most important things we can do. That message has stuck with me for years, and it still hits just as hard now as it did the first time I watched it 20 years ago. And that's why this movie means so much to me. So y'all, that's all for today. Thanks so much for listening to my special 20th anniversary review of Last Holiday here on Sub Media Reviews. Now, I want to hear from you. Does Last Holiday hold up for you? Have you rewatched it recently? Do you agree with the Rotten Tomatoes scores, or are you closer to my personal rating? Let me know your thoughts over on our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, and now TikTok. And next up, be sure to join us over on the Sub Media Reviews YouTube channel, where I'll be joined by a few special guests for a new installment of our Top 5 video series, where we'll be discussing our favorite movie soundtracks. It's going to be a fun one, and you won't want to miss it. So make sure you're following us everywhere so you can receive a notification of when it comes out. Thank you all so much for listening, and Happy New Year. Peace out. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Sub Media Reviews. New episodes drop just about every week, and our brand new YouTube series is coming your way. So make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook so you never miss a thing. Got a movie, album, or show you think we should review? Send it our way. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and just chill till the next episode.